Welcome everyone. Rock Talk with the Dog Rocker. It is our homework album review time. I am Jeff Benalmo. I am joined again with Doc Rocker. Every week we give each other an album we haven't heard, and then we come back a week later pretty much with our first reaction, because sometimes we only get it like the day before. Like
like this week.
Like this week. I listened to this last night for the first time, and you listened to yours last night probably for the first time.
No, I waited till today. I usually try to wait till
oh my God.
So that way it's all fresh. So it's like, all right, I literally just listened to it this afternoon, so I could give you like a play-by-play of each of my notes for each song. Because the one of the earlier times we did this, I figured, well, that's pushing it a little bit. I should do it earlier. So I listened to the album like Monday or Tuesday, and then we filmed the episode Friday. And by the time Friday came around, I forgot half of the album. I was like, oh, I wait till like the last possible minute to listen.
Well, everything you've given me so far, I haven't hated. So I have actually listened to everything you've given me at least twice. This one I went through twice. Okay, well, you know what? Before we go any further, the albums for this week are what did I give you?
You gave me Savatage, Edge of Thorns.
And you gave me Rick Wakeman, The Myths and Legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table.
Yes. And I went ahead and re-listened to that because, I mean, I'm a big fan of Rick Wakeman, of course.
Yeah.
And I listen to him all the time. But I actually haven't listened to King Arthur in years. It's been so long since I actually sat down and did it cover to cover. So I'll give you my thoughts after I hear yours. You want to start with Rick Wakeman, or do you want to start with?
Yeah, let's start with the man in his cape, Rick Wakeman.
All right.
Now, The Myths and Legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, fourth studio album by keyboardist Rick Wakeman, came out March of 1975. So I was like, 2-3 years old, when it came out. It's a concept album based on the stories and people of King Arthur and Arthurian legends. I actually heard some of this album before, long time ago. Merlin the Magician is the one that I remember. The track that I remember hearing
That's the one that gets around the most.
I think it was probably like a single or something like that. Yeah. Okay, there's choirs, there's synth riffs, there's pianos, there's chanting, there's Arthurian lyrics. There's like, the lyrics are like power metal lyrics, but pre-power metal. It's all there. And it's pretentious and dorky, and I love every minute of it. It's something like I'd have playing in the background if I was like 12 years old playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's really interesting. Like I said, first time I've listened to it in probably years. Like I'm talking at least 20 years. And I've only heard, like I said, I've only heard Merlin the Magician before that I can recall. Maybe I've heard the album before. I don't think so. There's a nice complex blend of themes. There's like an operatic, symphonic kind of element going on there. Now there's vocals in this too, which is great because there's actual singing. Because when I listen to a lot of instrumental stuff, I tend to get bored with it, no matter how good it is, unless it's Steve Vai. I tend to start getting a little bored, and my brain just kind of floats away, unless it's Steve Vai. Like, he's the only one I can really listen to. Seriously, like that, I'm just like enthralled. But there's vocals on this album. Now, the vocals are good enough. They don't detract from anything, but they're not fantastic. They take a backseat to all the keyboard playing, and stuff, and all the symphonic elements, and the orchestration. Like, they're just kind of there for, like, I wish there were better vocalists, honestly. It's like if I can say only bad thing, I wish it was like, and now I know he tours with this stuff too. I've seen videos of him playing this with a symphony orchestra, and I'm sure the vocalists that come on board now are probably better than the ones he recorded with. I don't know who they are. I tried to look them up. They're not really known vocalists.
Oh, okay. I was always curious, but I never bothered to dig and look at it.
Yeah, they're not anybody. Not like, hey, I invited the guys, I invited John Anderson down from Yes, and he sang some stuff. Nothing like that.
Yeah. I feel like that would have been much better.
Now, the spoken word stuff, it's neat because it just adds to the whole vibe.
Yeah, all
You know,
storytelling kind of
yeah,
thing,
yeah, I like that. It could be considered kind of hokey, but you know what? It's prog rock from the early '70s. Of course, it's going to be like that. You know,
Yeah.
you have to expect that. Now, I hear again, Mannheim Steamroller vibes. Again, it's probably because they're keyboards and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, some
each track,
brassy kind of bits and stuff too.
yeah,
Yeah.
each track
Okay.
blends smoothly. The track goes from one to another, really nice. It's each movement reflects like the different characters in the story. Depending on what character is the song is supposed to be about. The song kind of reflects that, which is really nice. Like Guinevere is a great song, but it's totally different than like Merlin the Magician.
Hmm.
And let me talk about that a little bit. That song.
Yeah, it's
Has
wacky.
like a player piano thing going on in there,
Yeah,
it
it's
gives like
a
an old
weird
west
sound.
vibe. It's really weird, but and it shouldn't feel out of place. But by the time you get there, you're almost you're ready for anything. So it doesn't. It comes out of nowhere, but I expected it to. So it fits. I don't know how to explain it. It didn't bother me. Listening to the whole thing,
That's one of my favorite parts of the whole album.
right, but it's like it comes out of left field because it's like
Yeah,
a
it
Western
literally like
player piano.
interrupts the song too. Like it
Yeah,
comes in like halfway through a phrase, and it like you have this like real nice kind of slow, melodic, beautiful thing, and like all of a sudden out of nowhere,
yeah.
it's like what the hell is this?
But by
I
that
love it.
time,
And
you're
then the orchestra reprise of it at the very end, I think it's great. I actually
yeah,
like. I prefer the second half of it. I actually don't like a lot of the first half because I feel like it's just kind of him, just kind of mindlessly shredding over like the same
noodling.
progressions. Yeah, it's a lot of noodling. Which I mean, you get that with Rick Wakeman. He's a noodler. He's the
Yeah,
best
I mean,
noodler in the world. But but
this could have been like the soundtrack for the movie Excalibur at points, and then all of a sudden he shoots off with these like modern for 1975 synth sounds, and it's
oh
like
yeah,
okay, like that contrast, I guess, got me ready for the player piano that comes out of nowhere because I didn't mind, you know. Um,
yeah.
it's cool. It's like a nice combination of like modern sounds and ancient sounds, we'll say, because there's a lot of choir singing and stuff and kind of chanting and and then spoken word stuff and all stuff like that, operatic stuff, symphonic stuff, and then crazy synthesizer comes in, and it's cool though. It's very 70s,
Mhm.
but I dig it. I did, but it's Rick Wakeman. I mean,
Yeah, you can't really go
I
wrong.
don't I don't think you can go wrong. It's
He's
but you
kind of
have
the
to
best.
yeah you have to know what to expect. Like some people, maybe it's like this is stupid.
Yeah.
If you're going
If
into
you're
it,
not into like the fun, goofy fantasy kind of stuff, it's definitely
yeah,
not for you because it leans into that pretty hard.
yeah, especially because it has lyrics too.
Yeah.
Like the other stuff was just instrumental, but this one is there's lyrics, there's actual songs, and so yeah, it's hokey, but I dig it.
I love it.
I
I liked it a lot more than I even remembered liking it when I first because I naturally I got into Rick Wakeman because of my piano teacher Matt Magasco. He was a big Rick Wakeman fan, and that was literally he gave me like listening homework when I was like coming of age. He just
yeah
gave me like burn discs for me and like made like Six Wives and Arthur and No Earthly Connection and like just like literally like go home, listen to this stuff. Don't come back to your next lesson without having listened to this. So I like had to, and I ended up just falling in love with it. I was like, this Rick Wakeman guy is great. Oh my god, this is so cool. So I got like super into him when I was like first getting into like all the progressive stuff and getting into Kansas. That was also because of Matt. So I was like on a big Wakeman kick, like all through like my junior, senior year of high school and listened to him all the time. And then I kind of stopped, I went to college and, I stopped taking lessons with Matt and I got into I got more into metal and things like that. So it's fun. It's been fun for me when I assigned it. I figured, let me revisit it. And so I'm going back and now going through like a whole bunch of the Rick Wakeman catalog. Some of the stuff that I already knew, some stuff that I don't know at all. I'm kind of going down. I'm excited to listen to some of his stuff for the first time. after all these years being a big fan of him. So I was like, yeah, I should give it another listen. I forget how I even thought of giving it to you. But you know what? Because we were talking about when we were planning the dream band lineups, and I naturally I thought of Rick Wakeman because he's my keyboard player. So, and then that led me to start thinking, oh, well, I haven't listened to his stuff in a while, and I went through all of it, and then I saw King Arthur. I was like, oh, Jeff would like that. That would be really cool. So then I figured I should listen to it so we could talk about it naturally. And it kind of blew me away. I was like, wow, this is way better than I remembered it being. I guess now that since I I did the whole college thing and studied music and got into the more classical stuff, and now I'm classically trained. I wasn't classically trained with Matt. He wasn't classically trained either. So, I mean, you can sort of pick up on some of the stuff that Rick is doing, even if you're not classically trained. But now that I am classically trained and I'm hearing how he's creating certain partimento and bass lines and certain all that kind of stuff, hearing those little choir bits with all the
you're hearing more
stuff. I'm hearing so much more than even I heard on the first couple listens. And I've always had a pretty good ear for picking things up in music, but now even more so after having really studied it intently for, God, I spent 7 years at university. God, where did that time go? So it's been really fascinating to revisit it and wow, the orchestral arrangements are really, really fantastic. And the mix is so good for the 70s. I can't imagine being around when this first came out and hearing this for the first time. It must have been mind blowing.
Oh yeah, I know. People must have been
it is
so nuts.
So
especially the people who liked Yes and liked that prog rock stuff from the 70s, the art rock. Having this come out in 75 probably was a game changer for a lot of people, and I could see that. It is a good album. It's a very good album. I would say it's a good album. It's a very good album.
I would say it's the best. I really, really liked it.
I will probably revisit this one sooner than I'll revisit the other one you gave me by him.
Six Wives.
Six Wives, yeah. Yeah, that was good too. I like that for what it was.
Yeah.
But this one,
the nice thing about it, they're short. Both of these albums are less than an hour. So you could go, I think King Arthur's only 40 some minutes.
Yeah, it's about 40 minutes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a short album. The whole thing in one listen. It's really easy.
It's good, and I want to listen to it again because I listened to it twice. There are things that I heard the second time around that I didn't hear the first time. So that just leads me to believe there's more. When you sit down again and listen again, you're gonna there's other things like you just said. You're discovering more. Going back and revisiting this. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is night and day between the one that you gave me last time, which was Meshuggah. I went from Meshuggah to Rick Wakeman. But that's the beauty of this podcast, which is I absolutely love, So yeah, I'll give that for someone that likes prog rock, I'll give it an 8.5. Okay. I'll give it an 8.5. Only because I won't give it a 10, only because the vocals aren't a strong point. I know they weren't supposed to be,
they definitely weren't the focus, but
it would have been. I would love these songs more if they had really great vocals. If Dio was there. I mean, if Dio sang on it.
Can you imagine Dio singing Sir Lancelot? Oh my God. He would nail those riffs. Oh my God. Lancelot's my favorite track on the whole thing. Just all the whole fight thing and all that. And it's definitely the most proggy, I would say, out of the whole set. There's a lot more mixed meter and sudden changes and real stark stuff. It's great, and it's got some real aggressive. I mean, the guy that sings Lancelot, I actually, out of the different singers in the cast, the cool thing is Arthur is portrayed by one singer, and then Guinevere is another singer, and Lancelot's another singer. So there's all the different singers. I think Lancelot is probably the best of the set. He's definitely my favorite. I like the singer that does Lancelot. Mm-hmm. Arthur, not so much. I would say Arthur is probably the weakest singer. And that might be intentional. It might be let's purposefully get a weaker voice to, represent.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. One point I do want to make is some of these power metal and symphonic metal bands that we do listen to, they definitely heard this album before. There's a connection. You can
easily hear the influence.
I'm hearing just because of subject matter.
Yeah.
you know, like I went right to Blind Guardian, for instance. You know, their use of like, and maybe they didn't take it from here, but they use a lot of like spoken word stuff, and they do use a lot of different vocal harmony and weird things. It's all about, you know, fantasy lyrics and Arthurian legends and stuff like that. I know I could see a lot of bands that maybe, you know, that are power metal bands or became power metal bands are probably Rick Wakeman fans. You know, especially the keyboard players in these bands,
or at least they know who he is. You know, he's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I can't see him not being a fan. You know, just a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I can't. You know, like for instance, like the keyboard player from Nightwish. I can't see him being like Rick Wakeman. No, I can't see that because there's just too much. There's too much there. You know.
Yeah. There's too many comparisons you can draw.
Sure, good album, really good album though. Yeah, so can't give it a 10, but it's close enough that I'll listen to it again.
Solid. If you take it for what it's worth, it'll deliver.
And if I do start playing Dungeons and Dragons again, I'll play that in the background.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't see that happening, but I'll still play the album.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you liked it. I was hoping you would.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
So moving on.
I gave you my favorite Savatage album, Edge of Thorns, which was released in 1993.
Okay. And I, as always, I purposefully went into this completely blind. Because I know, you know, we've talked about Savatage very briefly before. I don't know if it was on this podcast or elsewhere, maybe before the podcast, they even became a thought. I know because Jeff and I had one of our earliest conversations that spawned, we should do this and make a Rock Talk podcast. We talked, you know, because I've gone on record on the show before and talked about how I'm not really a big Trans-Siberian Orchestra fan. I think I don't hate them, but I think they're kind of overrated. And I'm not really, especially again, as a classically trained musician, they're like not my thing, you know, especially like a lot of like the watering down of like classical pieces that they do. It's like, you can be a little more creative than just play famous Beethoven stuff on guitar and call it something really, really novel. But that's my hot take. So if I'm not mistaken, so Savatage is like the thing that predated TSO, right?
Yes.
Okay. So like, what's the story? Like part of this band or this whole band became TSO in the future? Something like that?
Okay. I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure every member of Savatage has been in Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Okay, so
it pretty much came from the idea of came from their producer Paul Neal, and a song that came, I think, 2 albums after this album, called Christmas Eve Sarajevo, which was basically Carol of the Bells played heavy metal like, and you hear that on the radio every year. Well,
which I actually love to pieces. That's like the one exception. I can listen to that over and over again.
That song, that arrangement originally appeared on Savatage's album Dead Winter Dead, and I think that's where the idea started.
Like let's really get into this whole Christmas thing and like metal.
Yeah,
and mix all that together. Okay,
so that's pretty simple story as far as I know it. I don't know. I'm sure there are people who probably know the story better than me. I know there are people who know the story better than me, but basically their producer and the guys from Savatage were like, hey, this is pretty interesting. Why don't we do a whole album like this or something, you know? And then off they went.
And then the rest is history.
The rest is history. Now, let's talk about this album first, and then I could tell you a little bit more background about Savatage and Edge of Thorns, especially.
Yeah, that sounds good. Because like I said, I went into this, I was like, I know at least part of this is what eventually would become Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So like, what does that mean this is going to be? Is it going to have a lot more of those like classical elements? Is it going to have any Christmas stuff? Is it going to be instrumental? Is it going to be vocal? I went in with no idea of what to expect. And I think I literally should go through kind of track by track, because this whole album kind of took me on a ride and I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. It was, if you're like an average like rock metal consumer and you're just looking for something different to kind of shake up the monotony of your life, definitely check this album out, because it kept me guessing until literally the very end. Like the last track, it even had moments like they consistently thwarted my expectations of like, all right, so you get the opening, the title track, Edge of Thorns. So we start with this like real beautiful, like symphonic kind of like piano thing. And then it goes into this like real heavy, like D standard tune, like D minor key, really dark, really heavy, big chugging riff, really like high rock operatic vocals, and like overall just a really nice big fat sound. And I really liked it. And I'm like, okay, so maybe it's going to be sort of like proto symphonic metal, and maybe that's going to be the kind of nature of what this whole album is. No, it is not that at all. Then you get to the second track, He Carves His Stone, or like they just it's like it sounds like someone kind of playing with the light switch, you know, like there are just these really sudden like rash changes in style where like all of a sudden the drums are like super like thrashy and heavy, and then it changes to something else. And then you know, and like they so frequently like will change key like really abruptly. There's a lot of like weird key changes, there's a lot of weird harmonic progressions that I've never heard before, and there were a lot of moments of like, wow, I've really never heard anything like this before, and I love that about it. I like stuff that keeps me guessing, you know. I don't like things that I've heard 1,000 times, you know, even if what I heard 1,000 times is great and it's really good. There's a certain like, you know, I've already heard this, you know.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Right, been there, done that. But this was novel, you know. And while I didn't really care much for the second track, I had to like write it off as like, wow, it's different. It's really different. I don't know how to describe it. I really don't. It's heavy, it's dark, and then it changes. It changes a lot. And the nice thing about this album is all the songs, there were 13 tracks on the original. I listened to the original. I didn't do any of the bonus crap or any of that stuff. The 13 tracks, they're all really short. Nothing overstays its welcome. And almost every track is like a different style. Lights Out was a favorite. That was the third track. Scraggy's Tomb, the fourth track, was really weird. And I liked it. And it was one of those, like, each of these, it's like it's almost like they're kind of like purposefully trying to do like different styles in every track. I don't know if that was part of the intention of what they're trying to write with it. I don't, like I said, I just listened to it and took it at face value, and I enjoyed it. Labyrinth was really short, this cool like keyboard kind of thing, and it was really nice. Follow Me was by far my least favorite. Like,
oh wow,
if I ever like. If I listen to like, I definitely will want to revisit this album just to, now that I know what it is, I'll want to kind of take it with like all right, let me try to like, you know, digest this a little further. But Follow Me was my favorite track. That's my favorite track. I'm so sorry. For me, it was like this real, it was like, it felt like the arbitrary ballad that has to get thrown into every album. I don't know why producers are so hell-bent on, I hate ballads. I never, even when Dream Theater does them, I hate them. I hate ballads. I think ballads are slow and dumb and boring and stupid, and I hate them. And that's just how I am. And like, as Follow Me went on, you know, it built up and it got real heavy and big and impactful and emotional, but I was like, here's that same 4-chord progression that I've heard 1,000 times. Here's that same hook that I've heard in 7 other songs. Like, pass.
I think what I really like about that song is the change that they do in it. Not at the end. The change they do when they just cut the instruments and it's just a guitar and the vocals sing this like fast kind of melody. When he says, "Man only sees what he wants to see, whatever's in his mind." When he does that kind of folky kind of thing, that's like, because that, to me, when I first heard the song going back to 1993, that always got me. Like you were saying, all these abrupt things that they do, that's my favorite abrupt stop that they do in the entire album.
That one I don't remember. I might have zoned out at that point. I remember tuning in towards the end of it where like it kind of, there's a key change. There's really nice like guitar playing.
Listen to that song just one more time.
I might like it more on a second listen. The first impression, I like the first half of that song I hated, and I just, it
is pretty standard. I totally get where you're coming from. It starts off as like a mid-tempo, slower kind of thing. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So, but pretty consistently across the board, that was something I also wanted to mention early on. I forgot to mention this. The guitar playing is really, really, really good. I love the singer too. The voice on, especially for how diverse the album is. Like, there are so many moments where like, oh, this singer's awesome. I love his voice. He's got just that tiniest little level of grit and growl to his voice, but it's like really, really operatic and really, really smooth melodies. And like I said, in Lights Out, that was like probably like Edge of Thorns. I was like, wow, the singer's really good. And then He Carves His Stone. It's like, wow, they're doing some really weird stuff here, but the singer's really good. Lights Out, I was like, I love this singer. This is like one of my favorite singers. And I didn't look anything up. I don't know who anyone is yet, but I'm probably gonna revisit this, like I said. So moving on, Exit Music, this cool little piano jam, real simple and sweet and nice and pretty and fun. And then Degrees of Sanity was one of the highlights for me. That one I really liked. Weird, like kind of like it literally like half of the opening guitar thing is one scale and the other half of it is a different one. And I've never heard the two different scales used that way before. That I really liked. And then it just kept doing more stuff like that, where it was just kind of like, again, just constantly subverting my expectations and giving me like weird things like, oh, that's different. Oh, that's different. Oh, okay. And then we move on to Conversation Piece, which is my favorite track. That's my favorite one on the whole album. That one I could see myself looping that like 100 times over. It's got like this like real dark, heavy, like Rage Against the Machine kind of vibe, like these like real kind of like just these really cool riffs. They play with this thing called a Phrygian scale where you only go a half step up from your starting point, and it gives you like this real kind of, it's a big new metal thing. New metal artists do it a lot, and this one gave me a lot of new metal vibes in all of the best ways that I really, really liked. That one I enjoyed. Really cool guitar solo, really cool like clean guitar. Like they throw in these like weird dissonant chords over the distorted guitar riff, and I like that combination of notes. It's hard to explain, but I really, really liked it. That one, that was definitely my favorite. All That I Bleed, that was another low point for me. That was another like, all right, here's like a kind of slow, mundane, kind of boring, dry. I tuned out. I don't remember. I couldn't remember a note from it. If I had to sing it right now, I'd be dead. Damien was really cool, really dark, really heavy. Again, it plays around with there's a little use of what's called the tritone, which is that like devil note kind of thing.
Devil note, yeah.
It plays a little bit with that, and I think that's kind of cool. I don't know what the song.
It goes along with the song. I mean, the theme of the song, Damien being the devil's child and stuff. I
figured it had something to do with the devil. So just from the first impression, I was like, yeah, this definitely conveys like that demonic kind of thing, and I liked it. I like demonic stuff. Demonic stuff is cool. I mean, you can't have metal without demons. So yeah, Damien was cool. Miles Away was like the nail in the coffin of this is one of the best rock singers I've ever heard in my life. The hook at the end of that chorus got me every single time and almost moved me to tears. I thought it was amazing. The rest of the song itself, I don't think was like super brilliant, but the vocals were just fantastic. Awesome. And then we get to the last track, Sleep. And like, I literally rolled my eyes when we got to this part. Like, oh, here we go. Slow, clean acoustic guitar, like singer-songwriter-y kind of jams are like my kryptonite. I hate them. It's just the most, I hate it so much. I was like, the song is only like 3 minutes. I might just not even bother with this. And then the vocal part comes in and it's like this real stock, boring thing, and I'm like, oh, here we go. There's literally lyrics that I've heard before in other songs. I'm like, this is what a crappy, awful way to end such a weird, cool, diverse album of. It's kind of like this smorgasbord of like all these different styles, and then they end with this. But I was like, no, you know what? It's only 3 minutes. I should so I forced myself. I forced myself to listen to it, and sure enough, in like the last minute, they threw me another curveball, and like they threw in this like cool, like kind of like thrashy like riff, still with the acoustic guitar, which I thought was a really cool touch. Like they could have easily like broke into like a big full like rock band kind of thing, and they didn't. It's all just acoustic guitar and the one voice, and it was actually really cool. So now I'm like, well, shoot, now I want to listen to it again, now that I know what it's going to do, just so I can hear how they get to that change. And like, because the whole thing is just so seamless. They seamlessly flow from like bit to bit. And there are definitely moments that pop out. Like I said, He Carves His Stone, where like it sounds like, like you're changing channels on a TV. Like it's literally those starts of a change. But yeah, but even then, it's still like, as stark of a change as it is it still musically makes sense, and it's still like it still works, and it's like, oh yeah, I could see. And now I'm kind of curious to give it a second listen, where I can kind of like anticipate those changes. Now that I know the various personalities of the songs, I'm curious to now go through and kind of see. I literally think I'm gonna listen to it again, because
Good.
like I said, I had fun with it. It was fun. It took me on a journey, and it gave me new things I haven't heard before in a new way I haven't heard it before, and it was fun. So if you're looking for stuff like that, 10 out of 10. Awesome. Very, very different.
Yeah, this is definitely my favorite Savatage album. The weird thing is, the band was formed, I believe, by the two brothers, John Oliva, who plays keyboards on this. He doesn't sing. But originally, the albums before this, he was a singer too. John was the singer on the Streets. He was a singer on Gutter Ballet. They do have other really good albums. And his brother Chris Oliva was the guitar player. He passed away about 6 months after this album was released. This is the last thing he ever did. And that here's a connection between Savatage and Testament with Alex Skolnick. Alex Skolnick played on the following album that was written by, I believe most of the songs were written by Chris Oliva, A Handful of Rain. They brought in Alex to play the guitar parts. So he was a member of Savatage for a little bit. And this is also the first album that Zach Stevens sings lead vocal. I'm not sure why John Oliva decided not to sing anymore and just play piano and keyboards and stuff. I don't know why. Their voices are pretty similar, but John sings more like I can't even explain how his voice is. It's a little different. It's a little bit more unique, we'll say. It's a little bit more like whiny, if I could, use that word. I don't know. But
sure.
Yeah, Chris Oliva, he was hit by a drunk driver and died. It was real tragic.
Oh, that sucks.
I actually remember the day I found out that he died. I'll throw a name out here. One of my friends I went to college with, Jake Jukas. He's a member of the Rock Talk board, and I remember him telling me that the day he died, because Jake's from Florida, and Savatage is also from Florida. So they may possibly have had friends, that knew each other, or mutual acquaintances. But he knew like the day he died. I'm pretty sure. Like he was like, he was hit by a drunk driver and died. On the guy on the way home. So that really sucks, because Chris Oliva, it sucks no matter what. No one, that shouldn't happen to anybody. But Chris Oliva was just a amazing guitar player. So it's really cool that you're mentioning all this stuff that pretty much makes him a unique guitar player that unfortunately is no longer with us. No one plays like him. So I would advise you to check out the rest, some of the other stuff. I would go back from here. Yeah, I'd go back from here first. The one before it in 1991, Streets of Rock Opera, that's really good. And then the one before that, I like even better, Gutter Ballet. Hall of the Mountain King is another good one. They're all really, I don't think they have a bad album, actually, now that I think about it. It's just a little different. Even Handful of Rain with Alex Skolnick on it is really good. It's just Zach Stevens doesn't sing on the ones before this. That's the only difference, really. But I would, if I were you, I'd check it out. I would definitely say listen to this album again. I think tonight I'm going to listen to this album.
Yeah, I'm going to do it tonight or tomorrow.
I don't even know why it popped in my head to give it to you this week. It just was like you needed a homework assignment. So I'm like, I've been meaning to give this to you for a couple months.
We've talked about Savatage for a while, so I'm glad it finally came up in my assignments. And I finally, if I'm not assigned it, it's going to be God knows how long until I get around to listening to it, because my list just grows every week. So yeah, so I'm glad you chose this for me, and I'm glad I got to listen to it today. So
Great.
those are my first impressions. Like I said, going in not knowing who anybody was. Now I'm sitting here looking at like the wiki entry for it and looking at all this stuff that goes into it. And after hearing you talk about it, a lot more of it makes sense now too, which I like. So I'm looking forward to now having the knowledge I have, going through and listening to it again. It's gonna be fun.
Well, enjoy it. And that is our album reviews for the week. Remember, like always, please subscribe to our YouTube page and go to Rock Talk with Doc Rocker Facebook group and become a member. We'll see you again. Listen to metal. Life is good.
Yes.